Woo, everybody is hot. We are talking about the citizenship. You guys know Trump just let it be known nobody can just come over to America and just get citizenship just because they were born in America's soil. So a lot of black people are speaking out and they said that this amendment was for slaves. It was for black people that did not have a home because the white people stole us and forced us to do all this demonic stuff, even though it was a whole group of people here already. But you know how they do. They steal stuff and they want to turn around and act like they didn't do anything and they're the chosen ones and all that, blah, 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 blah. All right, so I thought you guys would be entertained by this. I want to know your thought by this. A lot of people are speaking out about this. What are your thoughts? Check this video out.
We had a very unfortunate decision in the Supreme Court concerning birthright. It was close, but a very, very unfortunate decision. So we're making adjustments because it's very unfair. This was done for a different reason. This was done right after the Civil War. This was for the babies of slaves. And what's happening now, people are building businesses around it. From wealthy people are building businesses around birthright citizenship. That's not the way it's supposed to work. It's a disgrace. They're buying their way in.
Birthright citizenship and the 14th Amendment has always been about foundational Black Americans. Case closed, no debate. But they try to find loopholes in it the same way they try to find loopholes in the civil rights era, the same way they try to find loopholes in our rallies, our protests, and our marches, the same way they're trying to find loopholes right now with reparations. Everything that immigrants do has to be funneled through what Black Americans have created. Everything from the United States of America to a reparations paycheck. Birthright citizenship is for foundational Black Americans. Immigrants want to get in on it. Civil rights were for foundational Black Americans. Immigrants want to get in on it. Reparations is for foundational Black Americans. Immigrants want to get in on it. There's this whole system that has been created where you take things that Black Americans have created and then you try to hand it off to all these other groups. And when foundational Black Americans say, hail to the law, and we snatch it back because we delineate, everybody cries foul. Well, your ass gonna be shedding some tethered tears because we don't give a damn. This is our house. This is our time, and what we say goes. And if we shut you down in the process, you just gonna be shut down and you gotta live with it. If you name everything that Black Americans have done, if you name everything Black Americans have created, it all goes back to the excellence of our country, but don't nobody ever want to put the spotlight on that. That's fine, because we're going to put the spotlight on it, and everybody knows our spotlight shines brightest amongst everybody's. And all we doing, family, is that we putting a twist on it. Each brother and sister, king, queen, goddess, and God, and we doing it our way. They cannot see us, not at all. They can try, but they're going to fail. And everybody always fails.
Bringing up Black American descendants of slaves while trying to end birthright citizenship, saying that it was originally intended for Black American slaves and not immigrants. And the person who is saying this is someone who directly benefits from birthright citizenship. It is a very obvious attempt to triangulate immigrants and Black Americans against one another. This is another attempt to create division and cause chaos and discord to keep people fighting amongst another and distracted from what is actually the issue. Also, we are not the only country that has birthright citizenship. The vast majority of the countries in the Americas, including Canada and Mexico, have birthright citizenship, along with other countries in the Caribbean. A lot of these countries instituted birthright citizenship as they were getting their independence to entice European immigrants to come to their countries. This is the time, now more than ever. A lot of people need to develop their critical thinking skills, critical listening skills, and their discernment. If something you are reading or seeing is making you feel very strongly, it's eliciting a very strong emotional reactions from you. Before you respond, before you repost, before you tag, before you share, do your research. Look it up yourself.
Black Americans need to be heavily invested in this birthright citizenship conversation because we only have citizenship as a result of the 14th Amendment. And I know that there are segments of Black Americans that believe that we grew here like cornstalk. But if you're paying attention to the Supreme Court conversations that have been had today, they do not give a damn about indigeneity and have gone so far as to question Native folks. And if tribal indigenous folks can claim U.S. citizenship on their own land. I did a video last year, particularly talking about the Dred Scott decision of 1857. And if you're watching this on TikTok, you can look at my caption for that video. And I was talking about how the Dred Scott decision, which was a Supreme Court decision, tells you what you need to know about how they feel about us being here. Chief Justice Robert B. Taney said that Black people had no rights that a white man was bound to respect. That the Declaration of Independence naming that all men were created equal was not for us. And that ultimately servitude was our place as Black people in the United States of America. Then you can absolutely recognize that no matter how many times they talk about illegals gaining citizenship, they don't want Black people to have it either. I find it odd that in this time, Black people will be trusting anything white men have to say, when the reason we have a whole ass Juneteenth is because people in Galveston, Texas weren't even told that they were emancipated. And also, it's not a matter of them stripping away our citizenship in order to ship us wherever around the world. It is their goal to have us in a continuum of servitude.
And we're not going to let it happen.
Birthright citizenship was for the descendants of slaves, not immigrant babies. How hard is this to comprehend? Black Americans, you have allowed this to go on so long to the point these people are fighting against you politically. You reap what you sow.
Second Black U.S. Supreme Court justice, and he takes this stance. Let's read it together. Blacks were entitled to citizenship because they were Americans. I bet the Founding Fathers didn't agree with that. Let's continue. They had no other homeland, owed no allegiance to any foreign power, and were subject to no other authority. Let's dissect that for a second. If the 14th Amendment was only intended for former slaves, descendants of another foreign power, therefore they did have a place from which they came, although whether they wanted to go back is up for debate. Nonetheless, your words contradict your argument. He goes on to say the same cannot be said for the children of foreign temporary visitors. So the distinction between slaves and immigrants, refugees, is that one was brought by force and the other is a willing visitor? Nigga, you got a doctorate in jurisprudence. You don't even believe this bullshit. He goes on to say that his colleagues that affirm the decision repurposed the 14th Amendment for their own goodwill. I would say the same was the case when the 14th was added. What are your thoughts?
As a Black American, if you feel like these immigration situations don't affect you, that's completely fine. However, after slavery, after we were freed, we were fighting for humanity, yes, but overall, we were fighting for citizenship. And Black Americans have been second-class citizens in this country since we were freed. So the reason why immigration things affects us as Black Americans is because when they're talking about birthright citizenship and we're talking about citizenship in general, we are the blueprint in this country for citizenship outside of white people, outside of white men. So no matter what, when we're talking about citizenship in this country, we are the centers of that because all of the citizenship laws and things that have been created have been heavily influenced by the Black American identity. So as a Black American, with them saying, hey, birthright citizenship is up for grabs right now, that affects us because, number one, think about the fact that a lot of people in the older generation were lucky to even have a birth certificate, and some of them don't have the documents to prove that they are citizens. So if they are taking away birthright citizenship when you're having a baby, you have to prove your citizenship in order for your child to receive citizenship, even if you are a born and bred, true, full-blooded American. So Black Americans, sure, immigration, when you hear immigration, we didn't immigrate here, but when you hear citizenship, pay attention, that's us.
In regards to this birthright citizenship stuff, I want to be clear. I never really talked about this and never really got down into the subject of this because I didn't understand what was occurring and why it was occurring. At the end of the day, the constitutional clause that talks about birthright citizenship 100% was meant to include or was 100% meant to refer to the children of prisoners of war. Okay? It does not mean, and it did not mean at that time, that if somebody from Libya comes to America, that when they have a child, that they have birthright citizenship. It never did mean that, because at that time, when that law was put into place, there were only indigenous Americans and Caucasians, or Europeans rather. There wasn't a whole bunch of other people here. So it at the time, it addressed the conversation of the time, of the moment, right? So the issue that I have with immigrants coming in and trying to use that as like a catch-all type of umbrella clause for them is that they then are now pushing that means that they have the same rights as those who are indigenous to this land, one, which is Black Americans, who I'm specifically talking about, and those who actually created the system with which we currently live in, which are the people who conquered us at the end of the day. That's what happened, right? Right? So the issue comes in when they are, and see, this is what they're doing. They are trying to say that Black people are immigrants and we're immigrants, so we should be able to be treated and get the same rights as Black people. And it's just not the truth. We are not immigrants. We were already here. So the issue with this conversation is that it separates us from our birthright and our inheritance to the land, okay? And to, to benefit from the system, that was created from on our backs. And it really was. And so when the immigrants come here and they say, oh, this place was built on the backs of immigrants. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. So Black people, you got to pay attention to this, because actually at the end of the day, what they're trying to do is they are trying to say that Black people are similar to immigrants, that we're the same, and we're not. We were indigenous to the land. We could never be the same. And I think we need to get a little bit ahead of this at the end of the day. I think instead of us even trying to play on this level field, because we are indigenous to the land, we have more capability and more power than we even know. And we need to start setting the tone for that. We need to start setting our own ground rules, because at the end of the day, it's getting out of hand. People who are coming from other places think that they have the same rights that you have. No, you have courtesies. There's a difference, right? You have courtesies. We've given you a courtesy. We've extended you a courtesy, okay? And we've given you some additional privileges, but those are not rights that you have. If you're an immigrant, that's just it. You're an immigrant. That means that we have given you courtesy. We have given you the courtesy to allow you to do certain things. That doesn't mean that you come over here and you start making the rules.
A whole lot of people thought that birthright citizenship was going to fail, okay? However, it did not fail. Okay, so if you are born in the United States of America, you are a birthright citizen. That is the ruling of the Supreme Court. And that is what so many of Black American forefathers fought for way back in the day. Okay, because back in the day, they were trying to base it on race and race alone. However, it's not based on race alone. It's about the fact you're born here. Okay. And contrary to what many people believe, Black Americans and white American abolitionists and politicians who were on the right side of history decided that early on. They were like, no, we're going to fight for birthright citizenship instead of it being based on race. Because if, in fact, they were to base it on race, they would have only let white folk be citizens, to be quite honest. They would have based it all on race. But now that I mentioned birthright citizenship and how the Supreme Court just upheld birthright citizenship and how this has been a long ongoing fight to get it way back in the day for Black Americans and white Americans who stood on the side of birthright citizenship, I want to talk about that because I ran into a comment and people didn't understand how Black Americans actually co-founded the United States of America. And this was one of the challenges that Black Americans actually took part in. There is absolutely nothing, let me say this, there's absolutely nothing that took place in the United States of America good that Black Americans did not participate in. I'm gonna say this, the movie Roots has y'all screwed up. Okay? The movie Roots has y'all screwed up. Black Americans were doing more than just what you saw on Roots. Okay? if you care to even read the book I wrote on it, okay, Black Americans did everything in the United States of America the same way as white Americans did, okay? There's no white people can do this, white people, black people couldn't do this. No. As far as skill set, as far as surveying, as far as a lot architects, engineers, Black Americans did the same exact thing as white Americans, and Black America actually did it more because we were enslaved. Okay, we did it more. So the founding of the United States of America was not just white folk. I just want to get that out. I just want to get that out there. It was not just white folk. It was Black Americans. There's nothing, when I tell you, I want y'all to understand this. Enslaved does not mean just working in the fields. We did everything. Everything. We did more, actually. We did everything. That's exactly why Black America can hold this nation together, because we know what to do. We know what to do. Okay? Black America did just as much and more for the founding of this nation in white America. So even when it comes down to birthright citizenship, it was Black Americans who freaking created that bad boy. Straight up. And I'm going to prove it to you right now, okay? If it were not for Black Americans, there would be no birthright citizenship. If it were not for Black Americans, there would be no birthright citizenship. That's facts. That's facts. All of what is going on in the United States of America is because Black Americans fought for it and made this country, our country, live up to what it's supposed to be. When you want to talk about the rulers of the good in America, you're talking about Black America.
Very quickly.
26 million naturalized citizens in America. So those are American citizens, but not American-born citizens. They are also, quick reminder, trying to get rid of birthright citizenship. SCOTUS just agreed to take up and hear that case. Those citizens are U.S.-born, but they're going to distinguish U.S.-born from American-born. I know that this isn't surprising to a lot of people who are watching this, but it is important. They are increasingly using tools that we have seen before in history. They are redefining what it means to be American. If people who are legally American aren't Americans, then how do you define American? How will they define American? They're talking about it as though it's this innate thing that you're either born with or not. You know who else thinks that way? If you don't define a nationality legally with citizenship, you're defining it ethnically, genetically. They're going after birthright citizenship.
Incredible company, but we're doing some unbelievable business. Chips will have a big percentage of the chip business by the time I leave office, which could be a long time. Who knows? But it could also be fairly quick. They say 2.5 years. We're going to find out.
Clear, obviously, since the day that it was passed, you can go back and you can read the congressional debates. This is not something that's even seriously contested by anybody. The president is using his authority as commander-in-chief to sign first an executive order using the new ruling the Supreme Court issued to expand the definitions of people who are ineligible for birthright citizenship. That includes, for example, alien enemies of the United States, members of foreign terrorist organizations, and large categories of people who lobby and act on behalf of foreign governments. And so with taking this action, it ensures that large numbers of people who wrongly would be getting birthright citizenship will no longer be eligible for those. Especially historic is for the first time ever in American history to ban birth tourism. So I want you to really let that sink in. This has been something that people have talked about not only for years, but for decades. The idea that people come here pretending to be a tourist, pretending to be a visitor, saying they want to go to Disneyland, they want to go visit a monument or go to a national park, but the real reason they're here is to have a child, to make that child an automatic citizen, leave our country, and then have a U.S. citizen child. It gives them access under this broken system to welfare benefits, ultimately to the voting booth, and all the other rights and privileges that belong solely to Americans. So that practice of birth tourism is, as of the signing of this order, hereby banned. And what that means is that no one in the world is any more allowed to obtain a visa for this fraudulent purpose. It is probably, and President Trump has done many historic things on immigration, too many to list now, sealed the southern border shut, record deportations, record integrity, stopping foreign terrorist entry, record reduction in drug seizures, dismantling criminal cartels, dismantling the gangs, right? Everything he's done that has been so unprecedented. I would put this in the top 3 in terms of importance because it ends what has been one of the gravest and most egregious abuses of the American system, and it keeps American citizenship safe.
And they've made a joke out of it. And we're actually the only country of size, I think just about the only country, period, that does birthright citizenship. I thought we were going to win it at the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we had a bad decision, very unfair decision. Our country suffers because of it. And when
they come up against us.
The 14th Amendment was specifically written to protect the citizenship of formerly enslaved Black people. As a legal expert, he is surely aware of the unambiguous language contained in the 14th Amendment. Yes, the affirming of the citizenship for formerly enslaved Black people was the impetus for the establishment of the 14th Amendment, but it actually went much farther than that. The citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment reads as follows: all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That language is pretty unambiguous, but people who oppose the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment love nothing more than creating hair-splitting, tedious legal arguments around what the framers meant by subject to the